gotta accentuate the positive, healing, money to negative, and lights shone.
I love that song. Did you like that song?
Yeah, that'll get your toe tapping.
Yeah, it's Perry Como, by the way. That's a song some of us remember more than others. Accentuate the positive. Really, it's the theme song of one mother-in-law that apparently gets it.
Yeah, she gets it. She's got 6 daughters-in-law, and they all love her. They adore her.
Yeah. This week we're talking about embracing change and redefining some relationships. So we thought we'd tackle the classically difficult relationship, the in-laws.
Since the Hoffman family seems to get it right, we sat down for a little chat.
I have just always felt very comfortable around my daughter-in-laws, and I don't like to even call them daughter-in-laws. I think they're daughters.
Karen and Leon Hoffman raised 8 children, 6 of them boys. And Karen will tell you they all married up. Daughters-in-law Brooke and Tana say their good relationship is about a mutual respect, being flexible, and being positive.
They're just very easy to please, very appreciative of anything, and so of course that makes you feel like I want to do more. It's easy to give.
Never any demands on our personal family and our plans, and very flexible, so we just feel very welcome whenever we're there. And
you can have traditions, but you don't need to. If somebody can't make it, it isn't going to be life or death.
But what about living together? Several grown children have actually lived downstairs in the family home.
We had the basement door between us. We had a kitchen downstairs for them. And I don't see how they worked it with one little shower for so many girls. They were allowed to come up, but they always knocked and come up, and we knock if we go down.
I like to have a warning before people come. I guess that's probably a personality thing too.
I'm probably very opposite. I'm so laid back that, anybody can come at any time.
As for parenting advice or giving financial help, Karen says she's learned to be careful and listen more.
Above all, don't want to feel like we have favorites. We want to let them all realize that we want to help where they need help.
We've never felt like they're getting more than us or it's not fair. They're always very generous to us and are sensitive, I think, all the time to what are the needs and are we meeting them.
And I think because of a strong foundation of love that we feel for each other, I think majority of the time, whether there's offenses or hurt feelings, it's able to be forgiven and blown away. But you know that their heart was in the right place, and it's like any relationship. Things happen, and you just keep loving each other.
Yeah, fun. And as they said, accentuating the positive. But they also raise some good issues there, like being flexible with time at family events, calling before you come over, some of those things. Elisa Goodwin-Snill is a marriage and family therapist. This is a classic problem. What's at the core of all this?
Well, I really think in order to have good in-law relationships, you need 3 things: respect, boundaries, and communication. This segment was so good for illustrating all 3 of those. They had respect for each other, they had good communication, and they had really good boundaries. We really need to look at this like we would the unit of the neighbors. The new marriage is as sacred as the neighbor relationship. You wouldn't just go barging into your neighbor's house. You would knock, you would ring the door. You wouldn't just start throwing out advice and telling them how to manage their finances. You wouldn't start disciplining the neighbor's kids. So if you can treat this new married couple as an in-law with the same respect you would your neighbors, then you're going to have that boundary in the proper place, and then just communicate about it. So if you've got a new baby in the family, instead of the mother-in-law coming in and meaning well by saying, hey, give me my grandbaby and you go sleep for 2 hours, thinking that she's showing respect that way, but by saying, hey, what's helpful for you? When I was your age and I had a new baby, I really needed help. How can I help out? So if you just assume there's a boundary, then feelings aren't going to be hurt as much. But we see a lot of this in our marriage and family therapy practices, because people unfortunately don't assume there's boundaries and cause problems.
Sure, and I've never heard that analogy before, the new neighbor.
Yeah.
But that's a great way to think about it, as this family treat them as a new neighbor, and you wouldn't overstep those boundaries with a new neighbor, so it helps you put it into perspective with the new family.
That new marital boundary is so important. I mean, as a couple, I need to solidify that relationship with my spouse and kind of separate from my family, and so I need to also be respectful of that boundary, that if my mom calls me up and says we have a family function on Saturday, I don't just necessarily assume that my husband's going going to want to go. I said, well, let me check with my husband and I'll get back with you. So it goes both ways. We treat the new relationship as most important, and the family is a powerful way of improving the family relationships and strengthening those relationships for the grandchildren and being a strong support for the family, but the marital relationship needs to be first.
Okay, there really are two parties here. And I have great in-laws, by the way, and they do all these things really well, but they're the in-law parents, and then there's the couple. So break it down for us and tell us what each side can do better. Let's start with the in-laws, the parents. Should we start with them?
Yes, absolutely. The in-laws need to accept the fact that this is the new family member. They need to accept that decision, even if they don't agree with that decision. But it's really important. This is a lifelong relationship. They need to respect the other person's privacy. They need to offer advice, but only when asked for. The in-laws can give a lot of wisdom, but don't just assume that you have the right to come in and tell them. Communicate about time and traditions. They're going to need to create their own traditions and respect the fact that they can't be at all of the old family traditions. And don't discuss marital problems. This can be a huge problem that causes rifts in this new family relationship. If a husband now becomes offended because the wife went to his in-laws and told him all their deep, dark secrets, now we're going to have some real problems that we've got to resolve. So try to stay out of the marital problems.
And again, it always comes down to, as you pointed out, they mean well.
They mean well.
But there are certain boundaries you just shouldn't cross.
You just shouldn't cross.
From the couple's perspective, what should be considered when building your own family?
Well, of course, we want to respect the other person's privacy, their individual feelings and desires about the relationship. We also want to respect the fact that they do have these relationships with their family members. We can't just abandon these important relationships. They've been there for a long time. So we also need to treat the marital relationship as the primary relationship, as we discussed earlier. And don't discuss marital problems. It's so tempting to go to the people that you love the most to discuss it, but it does not work out. And the other person oftentimes feels alienated. And oftentimes, in-laws don't keep your confidences. You know, they end up telling other people, and it's much easier for the spouse to forgive their husband or wife. But do in-laws always forgive and forget as easily? And so it's best to just keep them out of the marital problems.
Do you also find sometimes that the spouses themselves feel torn? I mean, there's this side, you know, these are my parents and these are my in-laws. Is there sort of that torn thing between the two of them?
I think, you know, if we're really respectful of our spouse, we understand the fact that the reason why they're so loyal and loving and kind is because they learned that in their original family. You know, so they are going to be torn. If I'm having an issue with my mother-in-law because she, you know, barges in and wants to take over and tell me how to discipline and take care of my children, you know, I need to understand that my husband will give me his loyalty, but he's going to be torn in it too. He feels a sense of loyalty to his family, and so if I'm respectful and understanding of that and I show that concern, it's also a good idea not to badmouth your spouse's family. They can sit and say, oh, my mom's so controlling, or my dad's such, you know, such a control freak, or whatever. You know, they can say those things, but as a daughter-in-law, you know, it's probably best if I just listen to my spouse and I don't complain to him about his family much, because that's going to cause some problems too. It's just some basic things. This is a process, not a perfect experience. That's why communication is so important.
Something you continually work on. As the Hoffman family so eloquently pointed out, I think it's great to accentuate the positive on both sides of the relationship.
Oh, yes. I mean, appreciation goes a long way. Appreciate them. Extended family is important for the health and vitality of the marriage and for the children. So it's important to try to do everything you can to keep this going.
Well said. Elisa, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Important relationship to nurture and continue to foster.
Yeah, and even though we all have great in-laws, everyone always has those struggles sometimes, you know, trying to iron it all out. So it's great as we embrace those changes and figure out how to segue nicely into that. Hey, we're also anxious to hear what your great ideas are, what you do enjoy doing on rainy days. So email us at studio5@ksl.